Hello everyone, welcome back to iFashi. If you're a new subscriber, welcome to iFashi. Today's tutorial will be teaching us how to draft this bodysuit corset. It is a very easy and straightforward type of corset. So without wasting much of our time, if this is something you're interested in learning how to make, let's get right into the drafting. Here is the pattern paper that I'll be drafting on. I've gone ahead to join my pattern because I want to be able to get the length that I need for this corset. So the first thing I'm going to do from the beginning of my paper, I'm going to come down with 10 inches for my bust measurement. So take your measurement from your shoulder to your bust, then you impute your answer. After that, we are going to get out the under bust line. My under bust is 13 inches and then my front half length, which is the waistline, is 17 inches. So those are the two lines that I'll mark out, and then I'll go ahead and label these lines so that we'll know what they are for. Now we have our front waistline, we have the under bust line, our bust line, and then the line at the top of the paper will serve as our shoulder line. Now after getting out these lines, the next line we're going to mark out is our crotch line. Like we do for pant trousers, we're going to place our tape on our waistline and take our hip measurement divided by 4 plus 1. So my hip is 44, which means if I divide it by 4 is 11 plus 1, 12. So I'm marking out 12 as my crotch line. Remember, this bodysuit is going under our crotch. Now after getting out the crotch line, I'll label it the CL, which is crotch line, and then I also go down with 2 inches to get my crotch extension. This extension is the part that will sit in between our legs, where those buttons or hooks are that you use to hook the back and the front together under our crotch. Now after getting out the crotch line and crotch extension line, we're going to go to the upper part and get out our chest line, which is 2 inches upwards from our bust line. So I'm going to mark out 2 inches upwards from my bust line, mark out the line and label it the chest line, so that we'll be able to get the yoke part of this corset. We will not be needing it, but for those that would need the yoke part, this is the point where we'll mark out the yoke. So to get that, we're going to take our shoulder measurement on the shoulder line, which is shoulder divided by 2, and then I also repeated the same shoulder measurement on this chest line. Then I came down with 1 inch for my shoulder slope from the shoulder line downwards, and I connected those 8 inches to meet up that shoulder slope. Now the next is my neckline. To get your neckline, using 3 as a general neckline is very wrong. Everybody is not the same. So my formula is I divide my bust measurement by 16 and I add 1 inch. That's how you get your neck measurement. So I'm going to impute that 3.3 on the shoulder line as the neck width and downwards as the neck depth as well. Now my bust span is 8, and when I divide 8 by 2, I'll have 4 inches. So I'm marking out 4 inches on my bust line, under bust, and the front waistline, and I'll connect them together with a straight line. Now I'll go back to my shoulder, divide my shoulder by 2, and mark out the midpoint because I need to connect this midpoint down to meet my bust span measurement on my bust line. Now that we've gotten that out, we need to mark out the difference between our front waistline and back waistline, which we will use as our side bust darts. So my front waistline is 17 and my back waistline is 15.5, which means I need to get out 1.5 inch from my bust line downwards, which will serve as my side bust darts, so that our front and back will be equal. After taking that out, we'll go down to the front waistline and come down with 4 inches. This depends on how low you want your slant on your bodysuit to be. So take your measurement, you know where you want that slant on the waist to start from. This is the slant going towards the crotch that I'm talking about. So I came down with 4 inches to get the beginning of my slant, and then I ruled out a line there and labeled it slant line. I also extended my dart down to meet the slant line. Now the next thing is to get out our armhole curve, which means I'm going to the chest line to mark out my bust measurement, circumference measurement, and then I'll divide what I have on this straight line by 2, come inwards by 0.5 to get my armhole curve. So I'll use my curve ruler to connect from my bust measurement on the chest line to meet that 0.5 and all the way to the shoulder. The next is to take our under bust tightening dart. I'm using 1.5 to tighten my under bust because I am not very busty. But for a busty person like 40, 42, 44 and above, please use 2 inches to tighten your under bust. I shared 1.5 inches into 0.75 on the left and 0.75 on the right, and I used my curve ruler to connect it upwards to meet my bust line. Then I'll impute the same 1.5 darts on this straight line downwards and connect it with my straight ruler. Now we know that we're going to cut off these darts. We'll extend it later, but first let's finish with the upper part. So I'm going to place my tape on my bust line now and take my bust measurement on the bust line. Bust circumference divided by 4, impute your answer there. Then the under bust circumference divided by 4, impute your answer and add the dart we have here. So my under bust divided by 4 is 7.5. I replaced my dart. That gave me 9 inches. Now I'll go to my waistline and take my waist circumference divided by 4. I'll also impute these darts back so that I don't get short. Now I'm going to connect what I have from my waist to meet up my armhole point. Now for this side bust dart, most times it's better to finish taking your measurements before you take your side bust dart, so you know exactly the point you're taking it. Now the next thing we're going to do is to go to our chest line to mark out the height of your over bust. This is how high you want it to be. So I went up with 1.5 and I took my dart there. I shared 1 inch into 0.5 on the left, 0.5 on the right, and I connected that dart downwards to meet my bust line. If you don't want yours to be too high, you can just go up with 0.5 or maintain the chest line. Now at this point, we want to get out the sweetheart neckline that we'll be working with, which is why I went up with 1 inch on my bust line and connected that 1 inch to meet this dart that we took. Now this 1 inch stopped at 0.5 from the beginning of my paper. I went up with 1 inch and went inwards with 0.5. This is the distance between the two cups. So when you open up 0.5, you now have 1 inch. So I connected from that 0.5 downwards to meet the under bust curve. Now if you're making this curve, make sure you use the curviest part of your ruler. Now to get the second cup, I'll come in from the armhole point with 1 inch, as you see me marking on the screen, come in with 1 inch and then connect with my curve ruler back to the dart to get the upper part of the second cup. Now to get the down part of the second cup, use the curviest part of your ruler like I said before, make a connection from the 1 inch we went in with to the under bust dart line. Now we have our cup ready. If you want to use a 2 cup, you have 1 and 2. But if you want to use a 3-part cup, you come down with 2 inches from the top beginning of your cup and then mark out a curve line there. Now you have the upper part as your 1 part and then the down part will serve as the second and third part of your cup. Now we're going to tear open this dart we have on our chest from the shoulder downwards so that we'll be able to tear this side bust dart. We need to tear the side bust dart. Now if you don't want your pattern paper to tear off, you need to place a tape there to secure that point, because when you tear the shoulder down and tear the side bust dart, it might tear completely. That is why I put my tape to secure that middle at the bust point. Now we're going to close down the side bust dart. Opening the shoulder makes it easy to close down the side bust dart, as you can see. So I'll straighten my line that is coming from my waist to the armhole after closing the side bust dart. The next thing we're going to do now is to connect our curve on the waistline, the slant that I talked about earlier. Now I'm going to come in from the beginning of my paper on the crotch line with 1 inch for the front, so that when you open it up, you have 2 inches. If you want it to be wider, you can come in with 1.5 so that when you open it up, it will be 3 inches. Now after coming in at that crotch extension and crotch line, we're going to use our curve ruler to make our curve to meet the beginning of this slant. Now what I'm doing here, I will use a pencil to roughly sketch it out first before I'll use my marker to get out the curve. Now remember, our slant part is starting from this slant line, so where you want the slant to start from. At that point you want the slant to start from, take your measurement there so that you drop the circumference you have divided by 4. You don't want it to be too tight or too loose at that point. So that's what I just did before I used my marker to sketch out the connection I want there. Now I'll use my cleaner to clean off the pencil I made before. After doing this, I'll just go ahead and label out these lines again so that we'll know what they are for at the middle, so that we'll not get confused. I have my crotch extension, crotch line, slant line, under bust, waistline, and the bust line and chest line as well. And then we also have the yoke for those of us that would like to attach a yoke to their bodysuit corset. Now we have our center front, which is on the other side, and the side front, which is on this other side of the paper. Remember to extend your dart so that we'll separate the center front and the side front. Now we'll just go ahead and cut out. And after cutting out, I'll introduce a fresh paper that I will be drafting the back pattern on top. You see how easy it is? We're already done with the drafting of the front part. Now on this pattern, on this paper that I'll be drafting the back pattern on top, the first thing I'll do is come down with 0.5 inch at the top of my paper so that that line will serve as my shoulder line, which is where I'll be taking all of my measurements from. So the first line we'll get from our shoulder line downwards is our bust line, which is 10 inches. Remember, we use 10 inches for the front bust line. So we're going to mark that out. After that, we don't need under bust for this back. We'll go straight to our back half length. Remember, I said my back half length is 15.5, while the front is 17 inches. So I'll go ahead and mark out 15.5 as my back waistline, and then I'll rule out these lines and label the lines. The next thing we're going to do is to get our crotch line and crotch extension for the back. Remember, we used 12 inches to get our crotch line for the front. We'll also do the same thing for the back. But for the crotch extension for the back, we'll make it longer because the back has butts that will carry space, which makes your back bigger than your front. So we're going to use 4 inches. We used 2 for front extension. We're going to use 4 inches to extend our back crotch. After doing that, we will now come in with 2.5 on our crotch line and 2 inches on the crotch extension line. If you take 2 inches on both lines, you will have a straight line, and it's not advisable to have a straight line like this. It will not cover our butt. So I'll cancel this straight line and mark it again for us to see. I'm taking 2.5 inch on the crotch line and 2 inches on the crotch extension, which will help make the curve pronounced so that it will cover the down part of our butt. So after marking out that curve, we're going to take our slant, the beginning of our slant for the back like we did for front. So measure what you took for front and mark it out as the beginning of your slant for back as well. Then we'll label out the line, the slant line. After doing all of this, we are going to go to the upper part of our pattern paper to get out the yoke. And to do that, we are going to get our chest line first, which is the 2 inches we went up from the bust line to get the chest line. So I'll mark out that line and go to my shoulder line and take my shoulder measurement, which is 8 inches. I'll repeat the same 8 inches on the chest line. And then I'll come down with 1 inch for my shoulder slope for the back on the shoulder line and connect a straight line to meet that shoulder slope. Now for the back, we'll use the same 3.3 inches for the neck width, but we'll now use 1 inch for our neck depth because this is the back piece. After marking out that line, we would close our shoulder and then go straight to taking our back dart. Before we mark out the back dart, I will not be using a yoke, so I want to go up with 1 inch from my back bust line to mark the point where this top will reach. That's what I marked out there, and then I'll connect from my armhole down to meet that 1 inch. So we have the yoke at the upper part, and if you're doing off shoulder, you have it at the down part. We'll also get out our armhole curve for those that would like to use a yoke for their own. So I used my tape to get out the midpoint of this straight line, and I curved it to meet my bust measurements on the chest line. Now we'll now go to take the back dart. For the back dart, I would not be using 4 inches that I used for front. I'll be using 4.5, which means I added 1 inch to my bust span measurements because back is wider than front. And then I made a straight line there. Then I also used 2 inches to get out the back dart, which is 1 inch on the left, 1 inch on the right. I took that dart on the waist line. We will extend it downwards later when we are done, but for now we'll take our measurement first, the bust measurement on the bust line and the waist measurement on the waistline. Remember to impute these darts back so that you don't get short. Now we'll connect what I have from my waistline upwards to meet my armhole line. Remember, on this chest line, to get your armhole line, we took our bust circumference divided by 4. On the chest line, that's where the armhole ended, right? Now back to the slanted line. Remember to take your measurement where you want the slant to start from, because that part might be different from your waist measurements. Remember, our waist is the smallest part of our waist, so the measurement might be different from where you want the slant to start from. So take your measurement and impute it on the slant line. After doing that, I did my curve from the beginning of the slant down to meet the 2.5 we took on the crotch line earlier. After that, I'll extend my back dart and then close up the dart. See how straightforward it is so far. If you don't understand anything, let us know in the comment section. Now for this back, if you want to use a zipper, remember to add 2 inches for your zipper at the beginning of your pattern paper. But I will not be using a zipper, I'll be using an eyelet, which is why I came in from the beginning of my paper with 1 inch, and I mark a straight line there to mark the point at which I'll be fixing the eyelets, which means I'll cut off the beginning of this back pattern. My back will start from this eyelet point. After doing that, I'll go ahead and cut out this back piece. Now after cutting out, this is what we have. The back is out, the front is out. Remember to subscribe if you haven't done that, and turn on your notification bell so that whenever we post, you will be notified. Now for this tutorial, we have the cup on top of our pattern paper. I'll also be teaching us how to draft out your cup on another pattern paper. With this method, you would get a deeper curve. You see all this corset that their cup is very deep, and you'll be wondering, why is my own cup not very deep? Most times it's difficult to get a deep cup from the pattern paper that your bodice is attached to. So if you want to learn how to get that deep cup pattern, please stay tuned. We'll be uploading the video next, right after this video, because I don't want this video to be too long. So in our next video, you'll be getting to know how we drafted this separate cup on another pattern paper, which means if you want to go ahead and draft out a dartless bodysuit corset or any type of corset, what you now need to do is just place this cup on top of your either dartless pattern or the one that we already drafted with cup. It can still work for it, right? This bodysuit pattern we have here is a dartless one, and this cup can work for it. It can also work for the pattern we just drafted that has a cup. So you can just go ahead and use this cup to trace out the bust part on top of the pattern, and it's very simple. See how curvy this cup is. The normal bust part of your bodice will not give you a cup as deep as this. That is why these days it is advisable to draft your cup separately. And if you want to learn how to do that, the video will be coming up right after this one. So now we have your yoke, we have your bodice, you have your cup drafted separately. You see the inside of this cup, you see how deep it is. It's like I said before, it can also work for this one that we just drafted. When you cut off this dart, it will come closer and it will sit just on top from the under bust. Just place it. I'm going to tape it on top of it now, but it will not fit because we have not cut off this dart. I don't want to cut it off yet. When you follow this pattern, you will have the option of getting your cup from your normal bodice on your pattern paper, or you will also get a curvier cup. You can experiment it and let us know in the comment section. But trust me, this cup that was drafted separately comes out deeper and curvier than the cup you get from your normal bodice. Talking from experience, you see how deep the inside is, see how it's seated curvy. When you close your darts, this cup will sit perfectly on top of your pattern. Thank you so much for watching to this point. We've come to the end of this video. Remember to like, share and subscribe to the channel. I also want to let us know that we are currently running a promo on our online corset courses. In this course, you'll be learning how to make corsets. And as we know, there are different types of corsets. In this course, we'll be learning how to make a Victorian transparent or sheer corset. All of the details involved, from the measurement taken to the drafting of the Victorian corsets and to the sewing in general. We will also get to learn how to fix your eyelets properly, how to go about your bust caging techniques, and then how to identify your quality fabrics for a Victorian corset.